Welcome to historic Oakwood Cemetery in Syracuse, New York. Oakwood was established in 1859 as part of the rural cemetery movement. It was planned and landscaped as a park-like setting where city residents could escape the dirt and dust of downtown streets. There are 159 acres with 60,000 burials. You can see the starting point for this tour just ahead, the chapel. The chapel was built in 1879. It was constructed of Onondaga limestone, and the architect was Joseph Lyman Silsby. But it's time to start our tour. Today we're going to look at some of the iconography of Oakwood, the signs and symbols found throughout the cemetery. Some are very obvious, others require a closer look. One thing to remember, sometimes a decoration is just a decoration. Today we're going to take a short walk in and around Dedication Valley. We're going to talk about some of the signs and symbols to be found there. Let's go. If you look down to the other end of the valley, see that thin white monument? Let's head there. An obelisk is one of the most common monuments to be found in cemeteries. It's derived from ancient Egypt, where obelisks represented the sun god Ra. As religious views changed in Egypt, obelisks came to represent the rays of the sun shining forever on the deceased. This obelisk is that of Judge Israel S. Spencer in Section 11. He died in 1885. Perhaps the most obvious Egyptian-style monument in Oakwood is the Pyramid of Cornelius T. Longstreet in Section 3. In ancient Egypt, pyramids housed the remains of the pharaohs. There they would begin their journey to the afterlife. Well, I'm not sure that's what Longstreet had in mind. A monument was often used to reflect a person's or a family's importance in the community. This pyramid is 71 feet high and replaced an earlier mausoleum that was deemed unable to withstand Syracuse winters. It's arguably the largest in the cemetery. Longstreet made his fortune in the mass manufacturing of clothing in the 1850s. By 1860, he was worth millions of dollars. And then the Civil War broke out, and he made another fortune mass-producing uniforms for the Union Army. I guess he could have a huge Egyptian pyramid if he wanted it. Not too far from the Longstreet Pyramid in Section 3 is Abel Ammidon's Arch. This is how it looks today. Ammidon's Arch used to look much better. This picture is from the late 1800s. Now, arches represented victory over death. They were passageways to heaven. There's another arch nearby that has an interesting story behind it, that of Dr. Hiram Hoyt in Section 19. It seems the good doctor was instrumental in the Jerry Rescue of 1851. It was in his office on South Warren Street that the plan was devised to rescue William Henry, also known as Jerry, an escaped slave who had been arrested in Syracuse by federal marshals. The plan worked, and Jerry was rescued, sent to Canada, and freedom. From large monuments, let's look at two smaller headstones featuring hands. This is the headstone of Gordius Welch, who died at age 11 months. Hands symbolize leaving, and in Gordius' case, the hand pointing upwards reflects his ascension into heaven. Another headstone with hands is that of Thomas Rose and his wife Eliza. Now, the normal depiction of clasped hands is left hand open, right hand grasping. Eliza died in 1862, so hers may be the left hand guiding Thomas, who died 4 years later. Surrounded by a flowered wreath, Thomas and Eliza are holding hands for eternity. Let's go over to the Pope family, where there are many signs and symbols. Look up in the back. The open book represents the lives of a husband and wife, Mary and Charles Pope. The double palm branches represent spiritual victory and eternal peace for Mary and Charles. The female figure holds a wreath, again a symbol of victory over death. A funereal urn sits on each side of the monument. Urns were Greek symbols of mourning, a repository of ashes draped with a mourning shroud. If you look very closely at the front of the monument, you'll find the name of the builder. Just to the right of the period in Pope, it says J. Sharkey, Greenwood, New York. James Sharkey's monument works was located in Brooklyn, near Greenwood Cemetery. I wanted to show you this monument belonging to William Alexander. Look up at the top. The first time I saw this, I thought it was just the initial A for Alexander. Actually, it's Alpha and Omega, signifying beginning and ending of life. Oh, take a look at this monument. Yep, the first thing we notice is the harp. It symbolizes praise to God, hope, and the shroud indicates mourning. But there's something else here. Here we have the all-seeing eye, representing the all-knowing, ever-present God. Now, the eye has rays of light and is surrounded by a circle within a triangle. The triangle represents the Holy Trinity. The whole thing symbolizes the holiness of the true God. Here's one more thing to look at on this monument, a butterfly. Well, it represents resurrection, or the soul leaving the body. Here's another interesting headstone with oak leaves, which are a symbol of longevity. Now, this headstone belongs to Burritt Chaffee, who died of typhoid at age 49. The oak leaves didn't really work out for him. Well, Burritt Chaffee is an interesting fellow in that he was superintendent of Oakwood Cemetery from 1887 until he died in 1899. Now, as superintendent, his emphasis was heavy on horticultural features rather than fancy monuments. In speaking of Oakwood, he said, "Fill it with flowers, shrubbery, and flowing vines, and make the resting place of the dead a place such as they would have liked to visit during their lives." This is a good headstone with which to end our tour. Scrolls represent the beginning and the end of life. Now, this is a rather short scroll. Perhaps it's because Harriet Robertson died in 1860 at the age of just 40. There are lots more signs and symbols here in Oakwood, but we'll save them for another day, another tour. Right now, let's head back to the chapel. This tour was presented by the Historic Oakwood Cemetery Preservation Association. Visit us at our website, hocpa.org. Thank you, and come again.